I am so excited. I couldn't sleep last night because I have such an amazing guest with us today. I have the great Kelsa Dickey. Kelsa is the she's a lot of things, but a couple things I'll share right here in the intro is that she has a company which does a little thing called financial coaching, and it's called Fiscal Fitness Phoenix. Very interesting that the word fitness is in there. And the other big thing, and how I know Kelsa is she's also the owner of the Financial Coach Academy, which does a lot. Essentially, they teach coaches, financial coaches. They teach you how to become a financial coach, how to develop your business, all that good stuff. I've learned a ton from Kelsa. I'm honored to know her, to have her here with us. Kelsa, thank you for being with us today.
Thanks for having me, Billy. It's a bit of a surreal moment because I don't know, it was what, maybe 5, 6 years ago that you first reached out to me and was
Mm-hmm.
like, I'm a gym owner at the time, and still a little bit, I have always been fitness obsessed in some way. I
Mm-hmm.
think at the time I was competing in powerlifting and that sort of thing. So I was sharing a lot more videos about that. But you were like, hey, we've got this fitness thing together. And also, you're helping people with money, which is something that I'm interested in.
Yes.
And now it's years later, and look at you. You are helping people, and it makes it so rewarding for me
Yeah.
because, like, the reason I started mentoring other financial people was because I wanted more people out there helping people with this part of their money, with the cash flow and the money that's coming out of their checking account and what they're doing with it. And just seeing you do that so effectively, Billy, is really rewarding for me. And so thanks for having me on your podcast.
Oh man, thanks for saying that. Yeah, it's really interesting because you have your coaching business. I don't know how much we'll talk about that. I know we are going to talk about coaching. I mean, your I don't want to call it local, but your financial coaching
Mhm.
business, and you get to help people, and that's awesome. But then you get to help even more people because you have people all over the world then helping other people with their money. I feel like I'm doing that to a certain extent as well, like helping gym owners become more
Absolutely.
financially successful. They get to help people get in shape, stay in business, and all that good stuff. Well, yeah, you mentioned that we have those sort of commonalities with fitness and of course finance. Would love for you just to share because you were from the accounting side of things, if I remember correctly. So how did you
Oh,
end
Lord.
up? Yeah, we'd love to share that story with people.
Yeah, I come from the investment and accounting world. So when I was in middle school, my mom filed bankruptcy. And so, of course, as a middle
Mm,
schooler, I didn't know what that meant or why she was doing it. I just knew that it was a bad thing. I knew that she felt really low at the time. I know money was a cause of stress in her life. And I grew up saying to, college guidance counselors and things like, I want to help people with their money when I'm older. That's really what I saw myself wanting to do. I was always really good at math and numbers and just psychology. My mom was also a social worker for the state of Michigan. And so I had that sort of combination of being naturally analytical and mathematical while also sort of compassion and empathy for people. So I wanted to help people with their money. I went to school, got a degree in finance, financial planning to be specific, practiced as a financial advisor, fully licensed for a number of years. Really never enjoyed it, if I'm being honest. It was the investments and asset allocation and portfolio management, managing people's investments. But clients would come in and say, I've got debt and I need help getting out of it. And I'd be like, yes, let's roll up our
mm,
sleeves. Let's get busy doing this. And that was part of the money that I really enjoyed. But as a financial advisor at the time, I did not get paid to help people with that part of their money. So I found myself doing the work that I love, but then not getting paid for it. So I went back to school. I got my master's in accounting and went into corporate accounting and sort of corporate auditing, that whole world for a number of years. But it was actually while I was in corporate America, sort of moving up the corporate ladder, that my business started on the side purely by accident. And it was because I was so involved with money before and investing as a financial advisor. Even though I left that space, people sort of saw me as this person who enjoyed money. And so people would just ask me for help, like, hey, can you help me with this? Or coworkers would, be complaining about money. And I'd say, why don't you come over after work? I'm pretty good at this stuff. I'll just see if I can help you. Like,
mm.
I had no fee structure. I didn't charge for it. I remember one lady, she was this little old lady that I worked with, and she came to my house with a candle as like payment, if you will, like as a gift to say thank you, for helping her with just figuring out what she was doing with her money. And so at the time, I didn't realize it, but I was actually building a business, helping people with just budgeting at the time is really how it started. This was back in 2006. I ended up
Mm-hmm.
leaving my corporate job in 2008 because it got to the point where I was every day after work. And then on Saturdays, I would sort of just be sitting with people at my dining room table, like helping them with their money, and realize like, wow, I might be kind of onto something. I've got people who are just sort of asking me for help, and so I thought it was, before my husband and I really started a family, I was sort of at this stage of life where I was like, I don't know jack about running a business necessarily and being an
Mm-hmm.
entrepreneur, but I feel like if I don't try this, I will always regret it. You know what I mean? This is always going to be a
Mm-hmm.
lingering question for me of like, what if I would have done that? Because I was absolutely like moving up the corporate ladder. I could have done that. I could have had a successful career in corporate accounting. But I just had this passion and I thought, let me just try it. I remember, Billy, my goal for my business when I first started it was to make $2,000 per month. I thought if I could just make $2,000 per month, I would be so happy. This was
Mm-hmm.
2008, the height of the global economic crisis. So the types of situations I was helping people with initially were very much like crisis situations. A lot of
Mm-hmm.
people who, had lost jobs or were behind on mortgages, were in over water in their houses and that sort of thing. So, but it took off. I mean, very quickly, I hit that goal of $2,000 a month. I had a lot of people that wanted my help. One of the things that I think you and I have in common, Billy, that I did really early on, and I still do it till this day, I just didn't realize it at the time, is I can help a person that is sitting right in front of me really effectively. Like I can hear what they're saying, I can see patterns in the way that they're describing their situation. It's like as soon as a person starts to tell me about their money, an image forms in my mind. I can see it clearly. I can figure out why it's unraveling for them or where it needs to unravel, what's working, what's not working. It becomes very clear in my mind almost instantly when they start describing what they have going on. And my job is to paint that picture for the individual so that they can see it just as clearly.
Mm-hmm.
So my business started by just being able to do that, figure out how can we make your situation better. Sometimes we're looking at income, sometimes we're looking at expenses, sometimes we're looking at your 401k. It really just depends, right? And
Yeah.
so that is something that I'm able to unravel pretty quickly. Well, over time, what I do is I then help a lot of people and I see patterns in
Mm-hmm.
what they're experiencing. And then I take those patterns and I sort of expand them in a much bigger way. So I essentially scale frameworks is what I do
Mm-hmm.
that can be applied in a lot of different areas. And I do think this is something that you also do really well. So you can
Mm-hmm.
help an individual in a very personalized, customized way, but then you see patterns in what all the
Mm-hmm.
people you're helping are experiencing, or all the gyms, let's say, and you can create a
Mm-hmm.
framework that can be applied in different unique ways. But the framework is something that people can latch onto. They can identify of like, here's what I need to do first, second, third. How I apply those steps might be different, but I at least have some steps I can follow. And that's essentially what I've done. And so when I train other financial professionals, I essentially
Mm-hmm.
give them the frameworks that I've learned that work really well with my clients, but they can
Mm-hmm.
apply them uniquely with their own clients.
Yeah, I love that. I feel like there's so many benefits to the things that you're sharing. If I'm a gym owner, it's from myself, right? Because if we're honest, we all have challenges financially, and then also for how I approach my clients. So one of the things as a coach, whether it's financial or fitness, but in the financial sense, is there's so much going on. There might be a lot of debt. They might have very little savings. They might have relationship issues. They might have a situation with this person at their job, and sometimes they come to you and they're so overwhelmed. Just like our fitness clients, they have all their own stuff going on. How do you go about knowing where to start? Because I know there's an art to that, right? Because we have all the answers, and I say that like half kidding, right? Or not. But if you're like me, you think you have all the answers for them, and how do we go about that? Like, where do we start? And maybe to the same point, if I have all those things and I'm listening, like, where do I start with myself?
Yeah, great question. I will say that this is a bit of art, and also where we always start with our clients is getting a handle on the cash flow first. So it's sort of like
Mm,
what is coming in and out of your checking account? What do you
Mm-hmm.
have right now? And what are you going to have a week from now, 2 weeks from now, a month from
Nice.
now, 3 months from now? Because if, let's say, a client comes to me and they want to invest or they want to go into real estate or they want to buy a house, it does not matter what goal a person comes to us with. Chances
Mm-hmm.
are their current income is our largest opportunity to seize. It is one of those things
Nice.
where we need to make the most of their current income in whatever way that we can. That does not necessarily mean that we go as lean as possible on all of their expenses. I do not
No.
believe in that. I do not think that that is usually sustainable for most people. So this is where it's
Mm-hmm.
like we first need to figure out how can we get you living a lifestyle that is sustainable for you, that gives you a fulfilling life, that feels really good for you, that balances sort of the investment of time and energy and also money, right?
Mm-hmm.
And make it so that we've got enough left to go towards your goals in whatever capacity that is, so that you can save
Nice.
for a down payment or we can pay off debt or whatever the case may be. So typically cash flow is the number one thing that we look at and get a handle on. The other reason is because if I tell a client, we need $1,000 a month. That's our figure. That's our target because that's what's going to get you to reach this one goal that you have in X amount of months or that kind of thing. And you can say, okay, you can be bought into that. But then if a month later your car breaks down and we weren't ready for that, we weren't prepared for that, like
Mm-hmm.
a poor cash flow can derail an awesome plan and
Mm.
buy-in, right? So a client can feel really bought into the plan can make sense, and then mismanaged cash flow or just not having a good handle on the everyday needs that we are going to be experiencing just by being humans who live our life, whether that's your car breaking down,
Mm-hmm.
your kids' activities next month that we need to register for, or those types of things. Like we've got to get that figured out too. The other thing is this is why I do think things like net worth, your overall financial position, your mindset, all of those things are very important.
Yeah.
But if I were to tell a client, like, okay, let's calculate your net worth, but they're thinking, well, yeah, but I have a car payment due next Friday that I don't have the money
Mm-hmm.
for. So, like, can we sort of figure that out first? It's
Yeah.
like we need to remove the chaos of just everyday life
Mm-hmm.
in people's financial life first. And once we do that, it frees up so much mental energy of worrying, of, stress or unproductive thoughts
Yeah.
around money that we then can move towards a productive form of wealth building, right? So, really, what we're
Yeah.
talking about is removing chaos and creating calm first and foremost so that we build on a really solid foundation that is also sustainable.
Oh man, so good. That leads me to a couple of other questions. I think I know what you would say to this, but I want to get that affirmation. I come to you and let's say my personal finances are a mess, and so are my business finances. Do you have a clarity on where you would start?
Roll up your sleeves, baby. Let's go. Let's get to work. I mean, no, really and truly, it is. I mean, we start by meeting with our clients weekly for a reason, and it's because there
Yep.
are so many moving pieces initially.
Mm-hmm.
This is also why I think that what we do, Billy, is so helpful and so impactful because there are so many different like levers we need to be pulling
Yeah.
simultaneously at first. It's
Yeah.
like this one thing is not going to solve everything, but this one thing is important. And as soon as
Mm-hmm.
we do that, we need to pivot over here. And it is, I consider it my job to be the one keeping a pulse on the overall situation. So, like,
Mm-hmm.
again, I'm the one that sees the whole cobweb and how we unravel it. And I will say that typically at first, a client is sort of like, trust and faith, right? Like it seems
Yeah.
like there's a plan here, and I try my best to sort of paint the entire picture, but also there's so many different levers that we're pulling, and we don't always know the outcome fully at first. So it's like
Mm-hmm.
I'll give you an example of a client who has a lot of different debts. Okay. And
Yep.
we want to pay them off, but there's some that are really high interest rate. And so what we're doing first is sort of a debt optimization plan. So we might
Mm.
apply for a 0% credit card offer, move some debt onto that card so that it buys us time and it buys us
Mm-hmm.
interest so that our money is going towards paying down the principal faster, right? So that is
Mm-hmm.
one of the strategies we might use if that's happening.
Mm-hmm.
Well, when we go to apply for that 0% offer, we don't always know how much credit limit you're going to get. So we don't always know exactly which card we're going to move onto it. It kind of
Mm-hmm.
depends, right? If we can move an entire
Mm-hmm.
balance onto it and eliminate one card fully, like that can be really streamlined. That can
Mm-hmm.
feel very freeing and liberating for a person. But if we don't get enough of a credit limit where we can only transfer part of it, that's going to maybe change our strategy. And it is my job to be making those real time decisions of like, we know the step we have to take. Let's find out what happens. And then I'm going to make the real time decision on what's best after that. So what I would say though, typically is if a business person comes to me, we're probably going to look at their personal finances
Yeah.
first, but
Yeah.
not in an overly detailed way, I will say. So I'm not going to like, comb through everything with a fine tooth comb, but we are going to get a good handle on it initially. We're going to see like what are the big moving pieces here? Is there any way that we can create some structure? We can streamline things, we can remove some of the chaos initially, maybe not paying attention to every single dollar where every single dollar is going, but getting the moving pieces, the big moving pieces figured out so that those are more clear. And the reason we do that is because the number one expense oftentimes to a business owner, at least a service-based business owner, if you have a gym, let's say with a big location, your rent might be
Mm-hmm.
your largest expense, but I would say the second largest expense for a gym like that or another service-based business owner, their biggest expense is their own salary, their own
Mm.
compensation,
Yeah.
right? And the idea is if what determines the compensation that is needed is your personal expenses, your personal
Yeah.
budget, your personal lifestyle. So we focus on personal first. That helps us determine compensation, which again is a big moving piece to the business. That also then helps us determine a tax strategy in the business,
Mm-hmm.
typically.
Mm-hmm.
And because if you do have a physical location, that's typically a fixed expense. And now we have your other largest expense, your compensation, a fixed expense as well. So we've sort of dialed in or locked in two of the largest moving pieces to a business. And then from there, we then look at the business. And that's when we start analyzing overhead expenses, pricing strategies, pricing model, those types of things inside of the business in order to make that run more effectively. And then from there, it sort of depends on is the goal a personal goal or is it a business goal? We try to pick one of each that
Mm-hmm.
we're moving forward in because that sort of helps us determine if we have a good month, if we have a great month and we've got some extra, where is it going? Is it going into the personal because we've got personal goals that we're funding that are more important, or are we growing, scaling, streamlining the business operations in some way? And so we actually need to be reinvesting in the business. That's where the extra money sits.
Yeah. The that's what I thought you would say, by the way, when I asked you that about the business and the personal. It makes perfect sense. Totally agree. I think a business owner, in quotes, needing too much money is one of the biggest causes of cash flow issues. Eventually, people going out of business. So yeah, I can't agree with that more. That leads me to that issue of a lot of business owners, unfortunately, they are not paying themselves or they are working so hard, but they're getting compensated very little just because they don't think it's there. I know there's not necessarily like a quick fix for everything, but what would you say, maybe even to either encourage them or to think about some next steps if that's their situation? Maybe I'm just trying to like paint a picture of even a lot of people I've worked with. Maybe they made some decisions in the past, unfortunately have consequences. Maybe they have big obligations and things are a little tight and just various things that are making it difficult for them.
Yeah. So whenever I coach business owners, really anybody in general, individuals as well, I always try to give a very tactical, strategic play. Like, here's the moves you can make. Here's the
Mm-hmm.
structure you can set up or a system that you can create that will support the thing you're trying to accomplish, the behavior or the habit you're trying to form. And then I also try to do sort of coach around mindset, which is like, here's the part of this that you're going to want to consider and reflect on and maybe lean into a little bit. This might be some growth that's needed, some things for you to consider. So in this example of somebody who's not paying themselves very little, the tactical play I would say is to make sure you are set up to pay yourself consistently,
Yeah.
regardless of dollar amount. I
Mm-hmm.
don't care if you are paying yourself $5 every other Friday. The
Mm-hmm.
idea of creating an every other Friday pay cycle for yourself that is repetitive, because the idea is once the system is created, then all we're
Mm-hmm.
doing is changing the dollar amount and hopefully we're increasing it maybe every 6 months or something like that, right?
Mm-hmm.
But it gives
Yeah.
you clarity and a habit, right? Now, it can be every other Friday, it can be the first and the 15th. Typically, tie this to cash flow. So, if you have a lot of renewals, like people renew their gym membership on the first of every month, and I know every gym is different. Some it's like whenever they signed up, it's that day
Mm-hmm.
every month. Other,
Mm-hmm.
businesses have it on the same day sometimes. You really want to look at tying your salary to the cash flows that make sense for your business. So if a lot of your revenues or the renewals get charged on the first, and so maybe that money hits your business account on the third, don't set yourself up for failure by taking compensation for yourself on the first of the month. The money
Yeah.
is not in your account yet, and you're just
Mm-hmm.
causing stress unnecessarily for yourself. Maybe make it so that you pay yourself on the 5th and the 20th, if that
Mm-hmm.
makes sense. So it's like
Yeah.
revenue comes in, one of your biggest expenses comes out of that, which is your compensation. And again, the dollar amount is irrelevant. You have to create the system, because then all you need to do later is change the dollar amount. So
Yeah.
start with $5 on the 5th and the 20th, or every other Friday, 1st and the 15th, whatever it is. Make it $50. Literally put a reminder on your calendar every, let's say, 90 days or every 6 months, especially at first if you aren't paying yourself anything, to increase this amount, right?
Nice.
It's sort of the same philosophy of increasing your 401k contribution by 1% per year when you're first
Mm-hmm.
starting out, because you won't even feel it if you do it that way,
Mm-hmm.
right? So really start small and give yourself incremental increases, because you probably barely feel it, okay? The other
Yeah.
thing that does, by creating a system first, I know a lot of people talk about mindset first, and I am a big fan of mindset, and I do think it's
Yeah.
important. Like I said, we're going to
Yeah.
talk about it. But a system can reinforce the mindset you are trying to adopt, right? So sometimes we think we need to have the full belief or the full mindset before we take action, when usually these things are happening in tandem. So we're going to create a small system, an imperfect system, and that's going to help reinforce that I do pay myself. I am a
Nice.
business owner. I am compensated. I am worthy of being compensated out of my business. This is an expense I now see consistently, because seeing something is a very powerful thing, right? We're also giving it a
Mm-hmm.
name, which is a very powerful thing. It's my salary. Imagine seeing that your salary is $5 twice a month, right? Or
Mm-hmm.
$25 or $100, whatever it is that you can start
Mm-hmm.
with. It can drive the behavior and the mindset you want, which is, now I'm paying myself. I'm worth paying a salary to. This is my salary, and now I can increase it. Once you do that, then we can shift towards mindset. And this is where, again, some of those things that I would reinforce, which is you deserve to be paid out of your business. Think of the good you can do by paying
Yeah.
yourself. What a good person to put, money in the hands of, right? Like, think of all the good you can do with money and those types of things. We tend to have a lot of conversations with clients about how money is a magnifier. So, if they have hesitations around, you know, paying themselves too much, or,
Yeah.
people who make a lot of money are bad people or something like
Yeah.
that. We have conversations around money. It's just a magnifier. It makes you more of who you already are. So if you're a good person, if you're a giving person, if you take care of your family, if you're a caring individual, chances are you're going to be able to do more of those things with more money. So those are some of the things that we'll often talk about with entrepreneurs and business owners and that sort of thing. The other thing with entrepreneurs specifically is your business will grow when your needs are taken care of. And this is
Mm.
something that we
Yeah.
tend to think the opposite of, business owners.
Mm-hmm.
We tend to think that the business needs trump our own individual needs, or we feel selfish for taking money out of the business, when just imagine if all of your needs were met, if you didn't worry
Yeah.
about money, if you didn't worry about whether you were able to provide for your family. And I don't mean just provide food
Yeah.
or housing. I mean for their future, for their potential, for their own
Mm-hmm.
growth, for those types of things that you're able to invest in your family. Imagine how much more you will love your business and want to pour into it with energy and heart and passion and all those types of things. And I believe that affects the culture of your operations and of your business. I think people, our clients, sense it and feel it. They
Yeah.
don't sense desperation, they sense a desire to have a business that delivers value for people, including yourself and in your community and those types of things. And so this is where there is the tangible aspect of money. And then there's the intangible ripple effect, which is oftentimes ignored, unfortunately, by financial professionals.
Mm-hmm. No, I like that. I think the mindset piece is awesome. I think the mindset stuff can get weird, but in this case, it's like pretty simple. It's like really just reinforcing that mindset with the behavior. And really, at the end of the day, I mean, this might sound overly simplistic, but it really just comes down to deciding. Like you just
Yeah.
decide that I am somebody who pays myself. Something has to cause that decision,
Here's what you're
right?
describing. And this sounds overly simplified too, but in order to self manage, we must be self aware first. You can't
Mm,
manage something you're not aware of. And really, the biggest hurdle with mindset in general is that we don't know what we don't know. We're not always
mm-hmm.
aware of some limiting
That's good.
beliefs or hesitations
Yeah.
we have or whatever. So, the best thing you can do when it comes to boosting your own self awareness is simply being curious and asking yourself, what do I think of that? Why do I do it that way? Where did
Yeah.
that idea come from? How long have I been doing it that way? Or what triggered that or what spurred that on? So if there was a time in your business, like you were kind of describing the person who maybe made some poor decisions at some point or got themselves in a bind, like even just reflecting on what was that decision? How did it affect
Yeah.
the way you feel about, or the way you think about your
Mm-hmm.
business or different parts of your finances, whether it's your revenue or your income or your expenses or your overhead or paying people for support? All those types of things can be influenced without us even realizing it sometimes.
Mm-hmm.
So my biggest recommendation is for business owners, and this is one of the powerful aspects of being with like-minded individuals, like in
Yeah.
a community like yours, Billy, where
Mm-hmm.
you can hear another person say something and you're like, oh, I think that too. And I didn't even notice that I think that. Or I
Yes.
don't think that, I think the opposite. That's
Yeah.
interesting because I didn't even notice that I had that thought, right? And so, really boosting self awareness, asking each other questions, not because there's judgment, but pure curiosity there, so that another person can boost their own self awareness, but you're also learning through their self awareness is critical for entrepreneurs.
Nice. Kelso, you're really good at like remembering what you're going to say. I feel like a lot of people when they say like I'm going to share three things and they share like one and then they just like totally leave out. I actually do that. So yeah, that's
I
good.
do
I
do
like
that
that.
sometimes. That's
Yeah.
interesting that you said that I didn't do that because I do have those moments where I'm like, what was I? I said I have two things and I just shared the first one and I'll have to come back to the second one later because I can't remember. But okay, good. I'm
Okay.
glad I'm on today.
Yeah.
So that's good.
Yeah, I was certain you were going to forget about the mindset part, and then you totally went right to it. So that really triggers something in me when you said about the awareness, because this is a kind of like a two-sided thing where on one end it's us as a coach because most of the people listening are coaches, but obviously with ourselves, I need to get curious about this to your point, which is there. Like when I first became a personal trainer, I was 18 years old. I got certified like on my birthday, I think, and I got business cards printed. And if I saw an overweight individual walking down the street, I would sprint over to them and I said, "Here, I'm a certified personal trainer. I can help you." No, I never really did that, but I
Okay,
wanted
good.
to. And you kind of see other people's problems. Like it's really easy to see that, like they're gonna die. They're eating fast food every day, or this person has all this high interest debt and they're like not even doing anything about it. What is my question here? What do you do with people? Because you hear people say things like you need to help people understand the problems that they don't even know they have. Because like to your point, like there's something limiting my business growth, there's something limiting my health improvement, there's something limiting my financial improvement. But if they don't see it, because I know like one thing I like about you is you're not like this militant, like everybody has to do things this way. But at the same time, I think we could agree there are some things that are pretty bad for you, like whatever area that is. Like, how do you go about that? Do you let it come up naturally? Like, let's say you're looking at someone's finances and you see like a pretty big red flag, but they're like, "Oh, I don't mind that. That doesn't bother me. Like, I just want to do this other thing." I don't know. Is that them minimizing it? Is it not? Is it timing? Does it even make sense what I'm asking?
It makes sense the way I'm hearing what you're sort of describing. And then I do think this is something that I've pondered and reflected on and really tried to, I'll say perfect over the years, if I'm being totally honest, is like this is
Yeah.
sort of the code that I've tried to crack, which is how do I guide people? How do I advise people? How do I provide really personalized recommendations that are best for the individual? and allow them to be part of that in a very collaborative way where
Nice.
they ultimately get to decide while not enabling them, right? While
Mm-hmm.
not contributing to a stressor or a part of their money that's actually a problem and they're sort of unwilling to change it.
Mm-hmm.
And I will say that there's a couple of things here. One, again, my job is to paint a very clear picture of what is happening and the impact of that.
Mm-hmm.
It is not to make a decision for them, but if I am seeing that something is bad, right, or
Mm-hmm.
it's wrong, one of the things that I always come back to, this is sort of my rule of thumb, if you will, is I always describe the impact that that is having on the person's goals that they have described to me that they have. Because
Mm.
chances are, the reason I think something is bad, Billy, and the reason you think something is bad is for a reason. It's not just because there's some rule or some
Yeah.
book that says it's
Yeah.
bad, right? There
Mm-hmm.
is a reason why it's bad for this individual, this
Mm.
very
Good.
particular person sitting right across from me.
Mm-hmm.
So, my job is to clearly communicate that because here's where a lot of financial professionals, and I would say just professionals, experts in general, we are so good at what we do because we've seen so many different situations, we've
Yeah.
had so many conversations that our brain is drawing conclusions very rapidly. Like
Mm.
the reason we think it's bad is because our brain has jumped through three different analysis already to
Mm-hmm.
get to that conclusion. My job is to not skip those steps, but clearly communicate them to a client. I call this sort of like the bedside manner of financial education
Nice.
because I'm not telling them everything that my mind is doing or all of the analysis that I've done because that would be overwhelming and most people frankly don't care, right? That's why they're
Mm-hmm.
hiring an expert is so that I do the analysis for them, but that I am at least showing them the key points and the conclusions that I'm drawing so that they can see it too. And most importantly, it's not just here's how much interest this debt is costing you,
Mm-hmm.
but here's how much this interest is costing you and the effect that that is having on your timeline of achieving your goal. So your goal is this. Because of this,
Yeah.
it's literally extending out the amount of time it's going to take for us to achieve this. But if we were to go this route instead, right, here's a solution that I can present to you. Here's maybe a couple of different solutions. Here's how it speeds up your progress towards your goal. Everything, goal achievement is the through line of every conversation that I have because it's
Nice.
ultimately the reason that thing is either good or bad for somebody. Because if it's
Mm-hmm.
not affecting their goal, Billy, here's the argument that I would take. There's just about everything. I remember really early when I started, there's like the Dave Ramsey sort of methodology, which is like credit cards are evil, all credit
Mm.
cards are bad. And I used to think that for a very long
Yeah.
time. I mean, I have old blog posts from like 17 years ago where I literally
Yeah.
said that.
Yeah.
And really what happened was over time, meeting with clients, actually seeing real case
Mm-hmm.
studies, real numbers, and having a number of clients that you know, they two different scenarios, I will say. One, they use debt very strategically, very
Mm-hmm.
effectively, very successfully. And it was like the best case scenario. And it was one of those things where, like, yes, they had debt, but they
Mm-hmm.
understood the level of responsibility that also comes with that debt. And they
Yeah.
managed both very well. They had a very solid financial position. I could see how it actually sped up their wealth building, right? And so it was one of
Mm-hmm.
those things where, in that case, I was able to say, here's perfect examples of where debt is not 100% terrible for everybody. The
Yeah.
other case that I would sometimes see is a client would have debt. Maybe it was, I'm putting in air quotes here for the listeners, is a problem in the sense that maybe they were paying interest. Maybe it wasn't exactly strategic debt in the sense that it didn't invest in their future in some way or generate more income or revenue in their business. It was sort of like spending that went on a credit card or past decisions. So it was like bad debt, I will say.
Yeah.
However, they were achieving their goals. They were putting money towards their goals. They were funding their goals at a rate that they felt was good for them. They were making the kind of progress that they wanted. We weren't getting into more debt, right? We weren't
Yeah.
making the debt worse. We were paying it down slowly, but maybe not as fast as what I would love or what I would
Yeah.
want for my own financial position or for some clients. And I can express that. I can clarify that. I can articulate that. I can even say, this is slowing down your progress, but you're still making progress, right? Do
Mm-hmm.
you want to do something about this? Is this something that you want to move around? And in their case, there were many times where they were like, I just don't have the capacity to sort of deal with that right now. So let's say in this case, they're
Yeah.
still making progress, but they've got debt. And I'm saying something like, we could move this around a little bit. We could do some 0%. We could apply for a new card, move it over. And they're thinking, I'm swamped. It's a busy season at work. I'm in like maybe it's January or February at a gym, right? Where they're getting all these new members coming in. They're flooded and they're thinking, I just need to be taking care of my current clients right now. I need to make sure all the members are feeling taken care of. My number one focus right now is not putting energy or time into moving all this debt around. It just sounds like chaos. That sounds overwhelming to me.
Mm-hmm.
Let's revisit it in 2 to 3 months when things slow
Yeah.
down and I actually have the capacity to do it. This is where I think one of the things we do really well is balance financial capacity with emotional time and
Yes.
energy capacity.
Yeah.
Because somebody who's a single mom who's doing her best is at capacity, the solutions we present to her are going to be very different than the single guy, let's say, who's got an apartment, lives by himself, doesn't have a
Yeah.
family yet, all those types of things. Like the amount of time and energy you can invest and also financial resources you can invest towards your solutions, all of those things need to be taken into consideration in order for a solution to be viable for somebody.
Yeah, that makes sense. Yeah, one of the things I heard you say recently that I really liked was because I always kind of struggle with this. I have I guess like two sides to me. One is this like super high achiever, go getter. Like I just want the plan. I'm getting it done. I'm gonna knock everyone over to get there. Like, but then there's the other side of me that's all about discovering who I am and all the under the surface stuff and getting in touch with my emotions, which has been a whole journey for me. And I have different coaches, and I have some coaches that are all about the plan, and then other coaches that are all about like, hey, what do you want to talk about today? And there's there's benefits to both, but I like what you said about that either extreme can be problematic when it comes to this stuff, right? Because at the end of the day, we do want to guide somebody to a better result, right? But at the same time, being overly strict on exactly how that has to happen doesn't really make sense because everybody has different limits, different situations, and different goals. And I don't want any high interest credit card debt ever. That's me. That's not necessarily somebody else, right?
Yeah. I think the thing you're describing that I feel like is probably the most important part of financial progress, wealth building, entrepreneurship is buy in.
Mm,
And some people are bought in because it makes sense financially. They see the numbers, they
yeah.
see it shake out, and it's sort of like, do not pass go, do not collect $200. Like I'm sort of like all in.
Mm-hmm.
And then other people, it's like I see the numbers, but it also needs to be sustainable for my life. I need to feel good about it, right? And
Mm-hmm.
this is something that when we first onboard a client, and this is something that I think we do really well as far as training other financial professionals to do really well, is that our job is to customize our approach to the person sitting in front of us. So when we first get an intake form from somebody, I can tell instantly now because I've been doing this for so long, like what kind of person they are and the type of coaching they need. So, for example, what level of specificity do they give when they're answering questions?
Mm,
So, if we ask a question, are they able to tell us in great detail a lot of their information? Or do they respond with more emotional language, right?
mm-hmm.
That tells me when I present a plan to them, am I presenting it in a very analytical, detailed fashion? Or am I speaking to the way it will feel? Like when you go to do this step, here's what might come up for you, right?
Mm-hmm.
And my job, and I tell all of my coaches on our team, is you sort of need to be able to wear both hats. And some coaches will wear a hat more naturally than others, but both the financial strategy aspect and the emotional buy-in aspect of what we do, they are both learnable, trainable skills. It is something that you can be good at both, even if you're not naturally good at both when you first start coaching.
Nice. Kelsa, speaking of coaching, I know we're going to start to wrap up here, but yeah, I couldn't let this go without talking a little bit about the whole coaching side of things. Just one point. Why is coaching so effective? So I'll give you just a little bit more behind that. Why does financial coaching help people make progress? Why can't they just do it on their own? It's kind of a silly question. Like we've both been like lifelong coaches, and most listeners are coaches, so they get the value. But I think it'd be worth exploring. Like, why is it so helpful, and why does it make sense for people to do it, especially the financial side, is like, I got to pay for the thing that I'm struggling with. How does that work, and why does that help, and why does that make sense? Meanwhile, it's becoming more and more popular thanks to you. But yeah, what are your thoughts on why do people take action when they have a coach?
Yeah, I'm going to rely on a study done by the American Society of Training and Development. And it essentially shared that when somebody first has an idea for a goal or they want to achieve something new in their life, they either want to solve a problem that they've been experiencing or they want something new, right? When they first have an idea, they have a 10% likelihood of success of achieving that goal. So when you just have an idea,
Wow.
you're still 9 out of 10 not going to achieve it if that's all you have an idea, right? When you create a plan for your goal, it goes from 10% to 50%. And excuse me, I skipped a step here. So when you write that down, the goal down, so you essentially declare it either to yourself or to somebody else, you go to a 40% likelihood of success. So from a 10 to 40% likelihood of success simply by taking your idea from an idea to a written concept, a declaration of some sort. Then if you make a plan, and a plan does not have to be a full plan, it doesn't have to have the entire thing mapped out, but it's got to have like at least the first couple of steps or some phases or sort of some approach or method that you're thinking you're going to take with that idea. Then you go to a 50% likelihood of success. Okay. Now, when you then tell somebody else that this is what you want to do, so you share your idea in your first or second step of your plan with somebody, you go to a 60% likelihood of success. Now, here's where the coach comes in, because
Yes.
once you schedule a recurring meeting with somebody, focus solely on a goal, whatever that goal is, whether it's your health, weight loss, time management,
Wow.
your money, your business, whatever the case may be, which I would argue money affects every single element of our life. Every
Oh yeah.
single one, bar none, there's no exception there.
No.
If you can throw more of your money towards any part of your life, that part of your life will get better. You know what I
Mm,
mean? So
yeah.
if you have a recurring meeting with somebody about your goal, your likelihood of success of achieving that goal is 90%.
Wow.
90%. This was a study done by the American Society of Talent and Development and Training and Development, excuse me. And so to go from a 10% likelihood of success when you first have, I would say most people have like a nagging feeling or a
Yeah.
nudge towards something, right?
Yeah.
It doesn't have to be concrete. It can sort of be like, and this is where for anybody listening, one of the best things you can do if you don't even have this yet is simply finish this sentence. It would be nice if. It would be nice if what? I think sometimes we overcomplicate or overthink our goals, or we think it needs to be a SMART goal, or it needs to be like all of these things. And that's ideal, of course. If you
Yeah.
can do those things, that's great. But you also don't have to do that to have a goal. We at least have to start someplace. So just finishing the sentence, it would be nice if blank, you finish that sentence, that is you're now at 10%, right?
Wow.
And then you work through the rest of those. But hiring a coach, the reason it is so effective is because it literally gives you that consistent checkpoint where you are dedicating time, effort, mental energy, all sorts of things, your resources to keeping that goal present in your life. And then I would say, in another practical sense, a coach helps people overcome a lot of obstacles, whether it's
Mm.
time, like I said, because you have dedicated time, right?
Mm-hmm.
Ingenuity, like we probably have seen a lot of different scenarios. So when it comes to knowing what things you could try that
Yeah.
will work, we probably have a whole basket of ideas that we could pull from, right? I would say distilling down information is probably the number one benefits that our clients share with us is they say, I know this information is out there, but I get so overwhelmed when I try and find it. And I really like the way you synthesize information for me. Like, I don't have to know all the things. I know if I go to Kelsa in a meeting and I have a question, she's going to tell me the parts of that topic or that area that are most relevant and most important to me. She's going to cut through all the weeds, right? Like,
Yeah.
I'm just going to distill it down in the most practical, relevant sense for the individual sitting across from me. And that is a huge benefit to people who are short on time, which, let's be
Yeah.
honest, most entrepreneurs, the rub that most entrepreneurs have is they can be short on time and money and also energy. It is sort of like
Yeah.
the perfect storm of all of those things. Um, I will say that one of the things I see most often when it comes to this is we're actually not short on money by simply making a few really quick changes. Like very, very
Yeah.
quickly in 1 or 2 sessions, we're going to find money very quickly. It's
Yeah.
sort of like the leakage that happens or the mismanagement. And I don't mean that to say that people are bad people or dumb or anything like that. It's just not having a really solid, effective system in place for juggling it all, right? And as
Yeah.
soon as we can get that in place, we're going to stop the leakage. We're going to naturally find money. And then when we use that money to free up time and energy capacity first. Because if we can free up time and energy, then we have all three resources now, money, time, and energy, to dedicate to all parts of their life.
Man, that's awesome. I feel like I need a financial coach after hearing all that. So
We
I'm looking
do. I
around.
believe all financial professionals
Yeah.
should have a financial professional that because this is the other main benefit that our clients share with us is simply having a sparring partner. That
100%.
person, like, hey, I have this idea, and they don't have to worry about if they want to change their mind or if they decide a month later that they don't actually want to do that. They don't have to worry about us judging them or saying, like, hey, why didn't you ever do that? Which a friend might do, not on purpose, not to make them feel bad or to shame them, but they think they're being supportive, but sometimes people feel badly just brainstorming a route that they
Yeah.
might be considering, where our clients don't feel badly about that at all. We're like, what's an idea that you've considered or that you've sort of had in the back of your mind that you've never voiced to somebody before? And let's just explore it. We're not committing to anything. I'm not saying you have to do it. I'm just saying if it's something you've been curious about, let's give yourself the faith and the trust that you can explore ideas and think critically about them and weigh pros and cons and all of your options and make a decision because there's a lot of value in learning how to do that effectively.
So good. Yeah, I would say I'm probably on the higher end in terms of like financial discipline. And yeah, if I'm honest, the last few months, big surge in business, thankfully. And I got convicted recently. It was like I'm not really doing some of the things that I teach my clients to. And I started feeling like it's not good. Not because I felt like shameful, but just because I believe in it and I know the value of it. And if I had a coach that was checking in with me about it, I probably wouldn't have. So I think that's probably so true for so many people.
Can I give you, here is a strategy that I've employed in my own business for
Yeah.
probably over a decade now that has been really helpful for me, and I like to share it with other business owners.
Yeah.
Are you familiar with Greg Crabtree, the
Yeah.
author of
Yeah.
Simple
Simple
Numbers?
numbers. Yep.
I got this from his book, so I do recommend the book, but it is very meaty from an accounting
Mm-hmm.
perspective. So it's definitely not for everybody.
Yeah.
But I want to give credit where credit is due. So that's where I got this concept from. But it is this idea of 5, 10, or 15% net profit or sort of pre-tax profit. So the
Mm-hmm.
number that I'm referring to here is you take your revenue, subtract cost of goods sold if you have them, which
Mm-hmm.
some service business owners don't have that. So, but
Mm-hmm.
if you did, you would subtract cost of goods sold, and then you subtract all of your expenses, including your own compensation.
Mm-hmm.
But this is before taxes. Okay, so
Mm-hmm.
taxes don't come out. If it's your payroll taxes, if you're on payroll, you would include that in your
Mm-hmm.
compensation. Okay, so that's the number. When I say pre tax profit, that's the number we're talking about. You look at 5, 10, and 15% as your goal. So if you were to look at your pre-tax profit as a percentage of revenue, okay,
Mm-hmm.
are you at 5, 10, or 15%? 15% is a great business.
Mm-hmm.
10% is a good business. And 5% you're on life support. This is
Mm.
one of those really quick numbers that you can look at your P&L if you have
Yep.
a P&L and very quickly calculate this number every single
Yeah.
month or look at your year to date and calculate this number. What I do is I use this to make decisions for my business of when I'm growing and when I'm scaling and how
Good.
and when I can do that. So for
Yeah.
example, I try to hover around 10% of this number at all times. When I am thinking that I'm going into a growth phase, either there's a big project I want to launch or something new we want to create, or I want to grow my team. So that means investing in personnel or salaries or that kind of thing. My goal is to make changes in the business in order to get the pre-tax profit number from 10 up to 15%, as close to 15% as possible.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. What that means is I'm working with a cushion Now, that might mean that I'm going lean for a little while, that I'm increasing prices temporarily. I'm doing something in order to drive the net profit up to 15%. When I hit that number, and I usually will see if I'm around 14 or 15%, so not quite 15%, that is when I pull the trigger on investing in something. Because when you go to invest, chances are you're investing, if you're a really good business owner and we're making really great strategic decisions, that investment will pay off in the long run. It's going to create more revenue. It's going to create more profits, but typically not at first. Typically at
Yeah.
first, we're investing, so we're feeling an expense. That will then take you back down to 10% net profit for a little while until that
Mm-hmm.
investment pays off, if that makes sense,
Oh
right?
yeah.
So then I stay there. 10% feels good. 10% feels healthy. 10% you don't feel like you're strapped for cash or you're worried about payroll or those types of things. You're not worried about your own compensation. And then you settle into that growth phase. The growth, the investment pays off. You creep back up to 15% again, and you continue that cycle time and
Keep
time
doing it.
again. Because if you don't do that, if you're always operating, let's say at 10% all of the time, which is again a good business,
Yeah.
but when you go to invest in your
Go
next
down.
growth phase, you drop down to 5%. And this is where I've had times in business where it feels tight. I'm feeling the squeeze. I'm sort of like, ooh, this is feeling a little tight. What's happening here? And when I look, I'm like, I'm at 5% pre-tax profit.
Mm-hmm.
No wonder. You will
Yeah.
feel it. Chances are you will know this number even if you don't know the number, if that makes sense, right? Like you know you're
Yeah.
there. So this allows you to prevent the scarcity, sort of the ebbs and flows, the feast or famine in your business where you feel like as soon as I invest, then I regret it. You do not want to create that mindset in your business where it feels as if investing means sacrifice and pain. You want to be able to invest and feel as if your business is still thriving and you can still balance things.
Well, it was a perfect full circle moment because earlier you talked about the idea of frameworks, and then we sort of wrap up with a really good framework. So, yeah, think through that. If you're less than 5%, your life support, but you're even like life support multiplied if you're also not paying yourself. Greg Crabtree talks a lot about that. The business is sick if it can't pay the owner who's working in the business a reasonable wage. So that's your case. Maybe this is a good sign to fix that. Obviously, with what you heard today, there's lots of things you can do on that. Kelsa, before we wrap here, where can people find out more about you, follow you, if there's anything that you want to share with them?
Yeah, you can find me, Kelsa Dickey, on LinkedIn. You can also find me, Money Coach Kelsa, on Instagram. My website is fiscalfitnesspHX.com. But I'm a huge fan of Billy and the work that he's doing for gym owners, business owners, that sort of thing. So by all means, utilize Billy. He is well trained, if I can say so myself. No, I'm just kidding.
Well, Kelsey, I just want to take this opportunity to thank you for all that you've done to help me and the ripple effect that's had, all the work that you're doing, just leading with a tremendous amount of integrity. That's what I think about when I think about you. You don't compromise your values. And unfortunately, that's really rare nowadays with people that have the influence that you have. So, yeah, really appreciate you, proud to know you, and wishing you massive success and great things ahead for you and your family and your business.
Thanks, Billy. Right back at you.